All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for dialing in. My name is Aditya Girish. I am the Government Affairs Manager and Biosciences Director at G2G Consulting, based here in our DC office. We're a government relations firm that has been in operation since 2007, and collectively over that time have been privileged to work with a lot of innovative folks, particularly in the biotech and medtech and healthcare space. In that time, we've raised $545 million, over half a billion. It's hard to believe, in non-dilutive funding for our partners and clients. And I know you're all here to learn more about opportunities that are coming out of DC. I know it's a bit of a different time, but we're very privileged today to be able to have the insights of a program manager from NIH. We'll talk about a SBIR opportunity, as well as a colleague of ours from the Virginia Innovation Partnership Corporation. We'll talk about some of the work he's doing in this space as well that might be of interest to you all. Just wanted to flag just a shout out to our partners at Virginia Bio for co-leading this webinar. We're very grateful to their partnership. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. I'll turn it over to my colleague, Liz Powell, who'll make introductions to our speakers. Then we can go from there. Liz?
Thank you so much. And thank you all for dialing in today. It's great to see such a good turnout. Um, I wanted to kick things off with a little introduction for Robert Brook. He is the Director of Federal Funding Programs at Virginia Innovation Partnership Authority. And Robert and I have teamed up for decades now, I think, a long time anyway, at least one decade, to make sure that startups and growing companies know about all the government funding opportunities that are out there and how best to navigate it. And Robert's really the expert. And so we're super excited to have Robert kick things off before we get into the details of this new SBIR opportunity. So without further ado, I'd love to pass it to you, Robert.
Great. And I appreciate the opportunity. I kind of reached out last minute yesterday to say, hey, you want me to just say a few words? So I'll be brief. My role at Virginia Innovation Partnership Corporation, or VIPC, formerly CIT, if you're in Virginia, know from us, our legacy company. My role is to specifically help companies in their efforts to learn about and apply for SBIR grants and STTR grants. I run a pretty in-depth program. I think you guys can see my slides here. So I read a lot of training. I do mentoring. So one of the things I tell people to do is events like today, build your foundation. The more you know, the more it's going to help you in the end. Listen to people, seek them out, learn about the agency you might be targeting, make the effort. Don't waste time, but be strategic about it. So we provide training classes. We do NIH training, DoD, NSF, NASA. We have these 4 to 7 hour workshops and webinars. We've got recordings available, live sessions. If you, I'll put in the chat here if you want. I'll put my email. So if you want to send me an email and say, hey, send me the slides or add me to my monthly SBIR newsletter list. These are some of the upcoming training sessions we've got. We actually on May 22nd in Charlottesville, we're hosting a full day NIH SBIR workshop. That's going to be the really good how-to on putting your pen to paper, your fingers to the keyboard on starting to plan it. Some of the background, how to engage with the agencies. We're going to hear some great information today from an agency rep. So this is a very valuable opportunity. Other training classes coming up that might be of interest. We've got one on securing strategic investors and partners, and also one about angel investing for small businesses. So some neat thing, and one on TABA on July 1st. So a lot of different things we've got coming up. The webinars are usually free for Virginia companies. The workshops have a small fee. So let me know, and the recordings are all free as well. So I can send the slide to anybody. So you have these links and my contact information. But we also have a small grant that if you need to doing it for the first time and want to hire an SBIR consultant that we can make referrals to, we have a small grant that you can apply to after speaking with me to consider you for a small grant to help pay for some of the cost of that. We also have an investment fund from our Virginia venture partners. They're now managing a new grant fund of $50,000 They just announced, and there's some information on our website about that, as well as called the Launch Grant, and there's also something called the Launch Note. So these are smaller funding programs to help early stage, high growth potential and growth stage companies do their thing. So I'll share my email in the chat, and let me know if there's any questions. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much, Robert.
Thank you.
And next up, we have the star of the hour, Michael Banyas, who is the program director at the National Institutes of Minority Health and Health Disparities. He is the expert on this SBIR opportunity we're going to hear about now. I also have known Michael for a few years, and he is so dedicated, really believes in finding ways to help small businesses grow and access these amazing funding opportunities. So I'm super excited to pass it over to Michael.
Thank you, Liz. Let me bring up my slides. So, hi everyone. So I'm Commander Michael Banyas. I am one of the program directors for the National Institute of Minority Health and Health Disparities at the NIH, and I'll explain a little bit about the NIH's SBIR program, the processes, and also a funding opportunity that is going to be using FY25 money that is due in June, that mostly focuses on SBIR companies entering in other markets that are being underserved and customer populations, but also that a number of other NIH institutes are participating in as well. My presentation is running about 20 minutes. So if people are like, well, how long is this going to be? I've got this down pretty good right now. So just a little bit about the NIH SBIR STTR program. And is this okay? This program, and I'm only going to focus on the business component, not the academic portion, which is the technology transfer program. But the SBIR program is a $1.4 billion program across the NIH, which is about 3.5% of its budget, to help. And it's a key part of helping support the NIH's research mission, but also just turning discovery into health. So whether it's taking a therapeutic or designing a device or designing something or developing a service to help support clinical research, like this $1.4 billion goes out to entrepreneurs and early stage companies to help with that federal R&D research and translation process. Essentially, it helps accelerate discoveries from bench to bedside. Now, one of the things is we're still adjusting to the new administration. I think our NIH director has only been there for about 6 weeks. So all this information is consistently being updated on the NIH Seed website. Everything from how to, register for your DUNS number and, the processes, but also other funding opportunities. And also, most importantly, I'm going to keep on emphasizing this because Rob brought this up and they're going to be doing a session, the TABA stuff. The TABA stuff is extremely important to put into your budget when you're applying. So these are congressional programs that are meant to stimulate technological innovation, help meet federal R&D needs, the economic stimulus or economic support programs for, throughout the nation, because these do create jobs and they do, help, contribute to the local economies of where these SBIR, STTR grants go. And they also help include the private sector in the commercialization of innovations for federal R&D needs. So there's 27 institutes at the NIH, and I'll talk about a little bit about how with the $1.4 billion that it is divided up amongst each NIH institute. Bigger the institute, bigger SBIR budget. So like my counterparts over at NCI and Aging and NINDS, they're going to have monstrous budgets. But one of the good things about all the SBIR program managers is we're extremely collegial with each other. Like I grew up in academic medicine, and even like I'm up in New York right now, kind of visiting some of the medical centers, and I kind of forgot how sharp elbowed it is. we are all very collegial. We just want to make sure that our applicants are put into the best possible position to get a good score and hopefully funded. So if you come to me and you're like, well, my component is more neurology based, I don't know if it's a fit, I'll refer you to my colleague over there. Or if it's more aging or you've got questions on whether or not it's a fit, that is absolutely no problem. My institute is disease agnostic, so we kind of fit all of these missions. But we're all very collegial, and um, an example of that is due June 10th. We have a funding opportunity, which a number of partner ICs have signed on to, called Innovations for Healthy Living. And once again, this is going to be using FY25 money. End of the federal fiscal year is September 30th. So we've got to clear our books of all our money by then. And, an example of how collegial we are together and how we're all striving to support the NIH's mission and work with the private sector, NINDS, heart, lung, and blood, aging, dental, diabetes, they're all signed on to this. But even if you come to us with like a cancer focus or maybe something that's focused on like hearing or multi-skeletal issues, just please, contact me. We will figure out how to help you. So as I mentioned, the NIH, there's $1.4 billion across each IC. The bigger institutes are going to be NIA, which I think is like $140 million in their SBIR budget, NCI, which is going to have like 200 million. But don't overlook the smaller institutes too, even if you're applying to the general omnibus. We're just a lot more versatile sometimes in how we can fund things. Like NCI's got a very strict pay line that sometimes loosens up towards the end of the year, end of the fiscal year, because of money remaining on the books. But the whole goal in general is to fund the best science. And I know with the smaller institutes, with SBIR, we're much more likely to fund what aligns best with the agency's mission rather than sometimes what might have the best score. So why seek SBIR funding, especially from this funding opportunity? One, it's non-dilutive funding. These are grants. We don't take any equity. You retain ownership and control. That includes keeping all your intellectual property rights. It's early stage funding, and it's a significant source of funding for, say, if you want to, scale up your business, start your business, or develop technologies that help align with NIH research priorities. The rigorous peer review, and I'll explain that in, I think, 2 slides, that is invaluable because we're kicking the tires on the concept in our review based on what is most scientifically feasible, not what's going to be the best profit margin. And I know, like right now, I'm up here in New York and I'm meeting with, friends that are some of our investment partners, and they love seeing the NIH score sheets, whether or not it's a company they're interested in or a company that they're currently invested in that have applied to SBIR, because it's a different perspective of what sometimes they assess their companies and look through the lens of analysis. But it's also a great way for them to continue to do their diligence and seeing where there might be holes and opportunities, and just get the team critically thinking about business development. I always like to say NIH SBIR money, you should be looking at what you want to do with it 9 months from now, 9 months to a year from now, not what you need for now, because the grants do take 9 to 12 months if you're going to be awarded. There's also the prestige and attractiveness of saying that you're an NIH company. And there's also the access to federal research and development opportunities and resources such as entrepreneurs and residents, the TABA funds, which help pay for consultants and other aspects to help develop your idea. And then there's that huge emphasis on commercialization. So just the eligibility criteria, once again, this is on the NIH Seed website. They must be organized for-profit businesses, smaller than 500 employees. This is by statute. Work must be done in the U.S. If it's a foreign company with a U.S. office, please reach out and we'll, see where that, how that work aligns or how it's eligible. Individual ownership must be over 50% owned and independently operated, and you can't be owned by more than 50% of one VC. So just the phases, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this. So there's 2 phases, and this is direct. There's 2 phases to apply for the NIH the NIH SBIR program. The first is phase one. I like to say that those are small research questions. Like you're building a business, and for $314,000 for 1 to 2 years, you might be developing an AI component. You might be looking to develop, certain aspects of functionality, or do user testing on a service. It's all about proof of concept, just seeing if it works. It's not an IRB. You're not giving out clinical advice. It's more or less just trying to get the ball rolling within a lot of different aspects. So one of the aspects that I have a lot of conversations with companies about is strategic planning. What do you want to do 9 months from now? But also what other markets you want to enter in. So other people, hey, or companies like, hey, do you want to enter a bilingual market? Do you want to enter a rural market? Do you want to enter, maybe if you're doing Medicaid, something for Medicaid systems, or like HRSA funded programs, apply, using your product in a Medicaid state or in a Medicaid system like in Georgia is going to be much different than like New York City or California. So I like to say use those phase ones in that 314,000 to not only scale up, but also use it to enter different customer markets, because those are people that need services that they're not getting. And that's a potential source of revenue for you, but also to help carry out the NIH mission. Phase two, and you've done your proof of concept. It's the larger research question. That is 2 million plus for 1 to 3 years. Usually people do IRBs at that point. If you're doing some sort of, a service, a therapeutic, a device that is going to have like a clinical result. But I also like to say, you can apply for a phase two, but you could also continue to keep the ball rolling on your company and apply for additional phase ones as well. If you've already gotten your proof of concept data, like I'm getting a lot of inquiries from companies that have been doing work with the Department of Defense and they want to translate their work into practice, and they've already got that proof of concept data, they'll go to like a direct phase two, which is they've got the direct phase, they've already done phase one, they've answered that proof of concept, that large research question. And I would, before going direct phase two, definitely talk to the program manager on whether or not that's appropriate. Same thing with fast track, which is a combination of phase one and phase twos. Those are a little bit of a different animal in which we're taking on more risk, and they have a lot more oversight to them. So please just talk to your program, the appropriate program manager, and I can put you in touch with them on what phase might be appropriate. But once again, phase ones, they're great to fund, 314,000, but you can apply for more than one at one time. And they're great, especially if you want to see where your company is going to go and enter new markets in the next 9 to 12 months. So just the review process, which, as I said 2 slides ago, is a little different. And it's a little different in how we assess the science, but it's also great for that business development and due diligence discussion amongst you and your team. So there's 3 assigned reviewers. They assess your application based on 5 criteria. Even though only 50% of applications are discussed, you will get feedback regardless. And this also not only includes innovations for healthy living, but also the omnibus that is open in early January, April, and late September, as well as the other individual funding opportunities. Now, I know there's some questions about, the Center for but as for now, this still stands at the review process. The review process looks at the significance, the investigators, the innovation, the approach, and the environment. If I can just explain each one of these really quickly. Investigators is probably the most overlooked one, and it's also the most important from my perspective. So investigators, if you do not illustrate your bio sketch, how your team can actually carry out this project, such as if you're doing a dietary concept and you have nobody there focusing on like dietary science, or you're doing a clinical research support service and nobody has any experience with an IRB, the reviewers are going to be like, well, these people, they didn't even get off the starting gate because they don't have the right team in place to move forward. The other thing is, talk about the significance of the problem, why it's a real problem, who the customer base is. For example, if you're developing like a bilingual app or a bilingual service and going into that market, talk about who the customer base is and why they're not getting access to services. Talk about with the innovation, what you're doing differently and how you're moving forward. But also with the approach in the environment, this is also where a lot of people lose confidence from the reviewers, is make sure there's a one-on-one. Make sure if you're developing a rural app, you're not, a rural service, you're not testing it in New York City. If you're developing something for, maybe a Chinese speaking population, you're not going to be testing it in a heavy Latino population. It's just those certain things, like the way you should be looking at it is these are very small, clear experiments, and the simpler, the better, because it's just going to come across to the reviewer that you're going to take this federal investment and carry out the work in an organized manner. So just some basics about my institute and our program goals. Even though we don't really focus on drugs, we're open to it, but we focus mostly on devices, services, digital health, and other means. But it also means that's why, these other institutes, these other disease-specific institutes have signed on to Innovations for Healthy Living. And the purpose is for my institute is to promote, to understand, improve the health of populations and advance that scientific knowledge for what causes health disparities or barriers to access, and what interventions need to be tested and developed to help improve health outcomes in these populations. So when writing your Innovations for Healthy Living, abstract, and I'll talk a little bit about abstract formats in 2 slides. It's important that you talk about how you're going to be laying a sustainable strategic framework to help improve access and healthcare delivery or research access within different population markets that aren't being served. And I like to say that, the barriers out there, and this can be found on the NIMHD website, for people not getting that health access at the family, community, individual, or population level is it a community or a society aspect? Caring for elderly populations and, say, an Indian American population is going to be very different than caring for something from a Latino population. Maybe you have a concept that has that great fundamentals, but you need to make some changes, be more based on culture, that phase ones are great for helping do that work. Is it an economic barrier? Is there insurance coverage? Is it feasible? Is it not cost effective? Like how is it that people can actually afford or utilize your service in order to get a greater health outcome? Is it infrastructure? Is there a place for you to get point of care or get clinical research? Is it a knowledge aspect, such as, is it at that reading level, such as a health literacy? Is it a health literacy barrier? You're not good if you want a patient to utilize, or a participant or a customer to utilize your service. You're not going to be, and they're in a community that mostly has a high school, it's mostly high school populated people. You're not going to be writing it like, you're not going to be writing your concept like you're going to be submitting it to an academic journal. And as someone who reads a lot of academic journals, I don't even know sometimes what they're talking about there. So, I'm in good company on the health literacy front, and sometimes understanding some of these topics, and also the physical aspect. Can they access this? And this is a really important aspect for people, for developing concepts for people with disabilities. So Innovations for Healthy Living, this is due June 10th. And I also want to say, I know G2G Consulting has been fierce advocates on women's health. This is perfect if you've got women's health concept and your kind of concepts or technologies, and you're looking to see, well, where's this area going to be going next, as NIH and ARPA-H and the other industries try to figure out their research priorities in this area. And this is due June 10th. And it's for technology, and most of the application responsiveness focuses on technology to disease self-management, how to deliver care, diagnostics, monitoring devices, services, and software, electronic health record APIs. I like it. I love it when people come to me and they're like, we're developing an Epic or a Cerner API. because that means that they're going to have access to the data, but they're also building something for an institution um, to actually buy that product to then have their individuals use it. Services that help reach another patient market, training and education materials for workforce development, utilizing NIH data systems, such as the All of Us Research Program, digital therapeutics, decentralized and digital clinical trials, services and products that help strengthen workforce atmosphere using big data and science, and also focusing on social determinants of health like housing and food. Those are all, that's a pretty wide area, but, those are the concepts that we're mostly going to be focusing on. So just once again, these are the institutes that are, you know, these are the institutes that are going to be that are participating in the funding opportunity. Well, like I said, if you see something up here like cancer related or something in pediatrics, my institute's disease agnostic. Please just reach out to me and we'll figure out how to make it fit to apply to the application. So, as I said several times, we're all very collegial with program officers, but one of the things we do best is reacting to a concept in writing. And what do you expect in order to prepare for your meeting with an NIH SBIR program officer? We love our abstracts, less than 350 words, because we can just pass them along. Keep it simple. In writing the abstract, make it clear, concise. First 4 sentences, identify the problem. What's the proposed project innovation? What's the hypothesis to increase health access and reduce health disparities? Do not spend your first sentences on its historical problem. It doesn't need to be like the format of a New Yorker article where 3 pages in, like it's more or less going into like the historical context for why this problem has been, or why the issue that will be eventually talked about has been like an issue for like 100 years. Define your, just remember when defining your project goal for phase ones, they're simple research questions. They're very simple. Phase twos, you're going to need to really talk about more of a commercialization focus and plan. And also incorporate 3 aims. And those are basically your project milestones. For example, you're going to work with bilingual healthcare professionals to develop educational materials and interactive content for a pregnancy app. You're going to be working with federally qualified health centers in Virginia to help test diabetes interventions within, a migrant farm worker community. Those are aims that are very important in allowing us to see how you're going to carry out the project. So we do a lot of one-on-one appointments. And here is my contact information. Please reach out and let me know if you have any questions. And I'd like to turn this over to G2G Consulting to help moderate questions.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Is that clear? I didn't keep a clock, so I don't even know if I hit my 20 minutes.
No. I think it was pretty clear, and you were I think spot on 25 minutes. So perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, that was super insightful. So I think everyone can see the webinar chat and the Q&A. So if you do have specific questions, feel free to put that in. Just one thing I think,
if I can just say this, rules of the road, I can't really comment about like federal funding for universities or any of that. Liz can answer those questions.
I'll kick it off first. So you talked about at the beginning, or when you were talking about phase one applications, you said, think about like use it to think about new customer markets, particularly, is it a veteran population?
Exactly, yeah.
To that end, like what are your relationships? I know there's a lot of emphasis on, not duplicating work that has already been done or funded by other agencies and entities. So what is your relationship like with some of those other agencies like DoD or VA or, ARPA-H? How do you guys talk to each other to make sure you're at your, how do you guys talk to each other to ensure that you're funding applications that are, truly innovative and not, necessarily duplicating work?
Well, like with us, with like the DoD example, like, it's not really duplicative work, because if you're going to be applying to my institute, you're not going to be looking at, providing care to direct service members, maybe their families, or maybe in a military or a veteran owned area. but in a way, look at how those customers aren't being served. And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, VA is or NSF is funding some of this work originally for our proof of concept, but now we want to use it to help access to other people that are not getting an access to services. It's all about opening up health equity or health, not health equity. I misspoke. Health access. It's all about opening up health access and making sure that people have the individual and community and society opportunity to take advantage of products to help them live healthier lives. We haven't really made any inroads with DoD and DARPA as of yet. Open to those opportunities. I'm very close with the VA's innovation officer. I love, especially with how the VA system is national, and you'll see clinics like in rural Oregon and Texas that they could totally take advantage of products. You could totally do a product to help take advantage of like a VA system or a VA network. And then with ARPA H, I think they're in a little bit of transition. I'm still trying to, yeah, I think with the turnover of leadership, I'm interested to kind of see the direction of where we go, but we're collegial with them as well. And we all try to complement, especially, within growing companies and contributing to federal research, how our each individual programs help complement other federal investments.
Got it. Super helpful. I see we have quite a few, we have a few questions in here.
I will say this though, like I know this is like the Virginia area, so I'm like very cognizant of like fiscal years and like federal investments, hoping that people know what we're going on, because I'm talking about because we're in the area. Like up here in New York, I mentioned that they look at me with like a glazed over look. So if you need me to further define something, please let me know.
No, that's a good point. There are a lot of Virginia folks on the line, but this was open to
Okay.
Across the country. But just to put a finer point on what Mike's discussing, so the fiscal year ends. So the FY25, the fiscal year FY 2025 year ends on September 30th. And so what Mike was talking about earlier is that the funds that are related to the SBIR opportunity that you highlighted, Innovations for Healthy Living, they need to be expended by September 30th. So that's what he's referring to there.
We do not like it is frowned upon to return money to Treasury.
Yeah. Going through the questions. So Dr. Current Taylor. So just for clarity, Innovation for Healthy Living is only for-profit organizations, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Which stinks because like I came from the community health center world, and I'd love for them to develop products for health centers. It's just, yeah, but they're all nonprofits. But yeah, it has to be a for-profit business. Now, can a nonprofit have a for-profit arm that can apply for this? Yes. And we could talk more about that, I guess, on an individual basis.
Okay. And then related to that, also from Dr. Taylor, is seed and innovation for healthy living are seed and innovation for healthy living two distinct programs?
No, it's all in the same. This is just an individual funding opportunity. Because the history of it's been around for a while. Like this isn't new, and it's open twice a year. Is that with the omnibus, we weren't getting in as many applications that were meeting our institute's needs. So we came up with a specific funding opportunity to help provide research guidance and lead across NIH on how to fund companies to help open up health access to patients and communities that were experiencing barriers.
Got it. Okay. So Janice Hall, what if we have an NIH grant proposal that we are wanting to upcycle, recycle for this funding opportunity, meaning that it didn't get funded before?
Reapply. And if you applied to the omnibus, this is also considered a new application. So you can just apply as a first-time applicant and still reapply for the omnibus in September.
And then second part of that question, how is this different? How is this SBIR application or this SBIR opportunity different from an OTA, so other transaction agreement with OD funding opportunity in terms of, I guess, So they're asking about how much more effort is it than, an OTA with an OD funding opportunity attached to it.
I don't know. Like, so I came from the All of Us research program, so I'm familiar with OTs. Um, those are more like kind of weird. Um, I don't know, like it's just a great different grant mechanism. These are grants. OTs can be canceled at a moment's notice, and they're almost like a contract.
Yeah.
And they go through a different funding or a different award system. So it really is apples and oranges.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, moving along. So Sue McKinney, I'm developing a botanical drug for uterine fibroids. Do we need to change the language in my protocols so to remove the words woman, women, and remove reference to health disparities of uterine fibroids in women of color?
You don't have to remove the language for health disparities, and you don't have to remove the language for women. In fact, if it's uterine fibroids, as a man, I don't think I'm going to have that. But no, you do not have to change the words from woman. Like there's an executive order about DEI language and how, and yes, it does kind of get confused with the health disparities aspects. But I would talk to Liz can talk a little bit more about the maybe in another forum about that language and where the executive order and where it might be conflicting. But like I wouldn't use the words health equity or diversity or inclusiveness, but women products are totally apply for this.
And then just put a finer point on something you mentioned earlier. So it's wise to reframe it as where possible as
Access.
access, correct? Because I heard you say that, so I just want to put a finer point on that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Colette Ellis, it doesn't appear that NIM, so the National Institute on Mental Health, is participating in this Healthy Living initiative. Is there interest in funding behavioral health projects?
Yes. Absolutely. And you know what? The thing too is I can talk to my counterparts over there and they can provide feedback. But yes, behavioral health is a big interest for my institute.
Great. Okay. So could you please provide the link? Yep, we just provided a link right there.
And I can send out the slides as well as, the especially with the slide that has the aspects of how to write the abstract with also the funding opportunity link when I get back into town tomorrow.
Excellent. And yeah, just for public service announcement, this is being recorded. We'll obviously share the recording in addition to the slides. So don't have to worry about, noting down every single thing. Yeah, okay, moving along to questions. Can someone share a link to the eligibility criteria? So yeah, we can message you separately, Kendall. Kim, just to be clear, nonprofits cannot apply to this. Yes, I think that's been answered. That's been answered before. No, it's just for profits. And just to put a finer point on that, Michael, in terms of nonprofit partnering, so if this is like a small company that's been spun out of a nonprofit, that's been spun out of an academic lab, what's the gray area there that's permissible? Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Could you restate the question? I kind of got.
Sorry. So again, it's just to be clear, nonprofits cannot apply to this. The answer is yes, they cannot apply to this.
They can be used as subcontractors.
Yeah.
Nonprofits like community health centers are used all the time, or academic medical institutions are used as subcontractors for this. And you can use 45% to 55% of the grant, depending on the phase, for subcontract work. Yeah. I'll have to don't quote me on those, on that. I think it might be 47%. It's online, but they can be used for subcontract work.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful to know. It doesn't bar partnerships with nonprofits. It's just the primary has to be a for-profit.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, so Yenny Abraham, I'm creating a software as a service, I guess, platform for fertility specialists. Would a one-to-one be helpful in clarifying appropriate language to make sure what we are creating is aligned? This product
Yeah, we can set up a one-on-one. You can just
Okay.
email me. It might take me like 2 days. I'm kind of a little behind on email, but I should be able to get it back to everyone on Friday by Friday.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and we'll make sure to share this out probably by Friday as well. So we'll make sure to share his contact info and the slides. Also related to that, so Yenny also asks, what is the timeline on funding approval, and would we be assigned an officer to support us in post funding? And I think you alluded to this earlier, Michael, but if you just
Well, hopefully all the funding, if you're got a scoreable application, um, and each institute is different on what's considered a scoreable application. Hopefully that'll be given out by the end of September. But these are I know that there's a lot of, like, we just started up scientific councils again, so I know that there's been a little bit of the system isn't operating how it typically has. So but yeah, no, it's our intention is to use FY25 money for this funding opportunity.
okay, so before, yeah, presumably before the end of the fiscal year, so within a few months. Okay. Let's see, discuss Yanni's question. Nirshala Chand. Hi, can early stage companies apply who are not incorporated?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Like,
Okay.
it's better for your tax reasons to, when you go to file, to of course have an LLC and be incorporated, but that's a very simple process that I'm sure Virginia Bio could help with.
Great.
Just as a note, when you write a proposal, it's what you expect to have at time of award, not at time of application. You want to have
Yeah,
the
we
vision,
do all
the
the
team, the
verification.
facilities, yeah,
Yeah,
but you have to have the company to apply under, right?
yeah, you do. Yeah. And we verify all that during the time of the award or prior to award.
So oh, sorry. I was like, that's a question. I didn't realize it was Robert just adding a comment in there. Thank you. So Yefa and Glavin, yep, we'll send you the slides. As long as you're registered, you'll get the slides. And then Anthony Stearns, can you speak to the commercialization aspects of the application similar to the omnibus?
It's very similar. Yeah, they're all coming out of the same pot of money. It's just, this is just a specific funding opportunity. So for commercialization, you're going to want to show how you're going to be testing this in your different customer markets and bringing it to market.
Also, just as a follow-up, so just so folks know, can you speak a little bit more about, and you touched upon this on one of your slides, like people may not know all the terminology in terms of omnibus versus this opportunity. Can you just clarify?
Omnibus, yeah. So omnibus is like all the institutes apply 3 times. It's open applications 3 times a year. All the institutes that participate in the NIH SBIR program are part of that. You can choose up to 2 institutes. That is January, April, and September. And this is an individual funding opportunity. There's certain opportunities out there that are individual funding opportunities. It all comes out of the same pot of money. It's just with this, it goes through a more, like, the review process is going to go to a special emphasis panel and of health disparities experts. And also there's just different receipt dates for it. So, and it just adds more specificity towards the research priorities in this area. But if you apply to this, and you're applying to this for the first time, like, this would be a new application.
Okay. That's helpful. Okay, so Dr. Taylor again, do for-profits need to meet a certain income or revenue level to qualify for this opportunity?
No.
Okay.
These are actually really good questions. They're super good questions.
Yeah, we like
super good and very technical. I'm going to need a nap after this.
Let's see. So we still have about 13 minutes. So if folks want to still have some questions, you can type those in.
And once again, this opportunity is great for women's health, which I know, since there was a lot of momentum behind this, and I know people are, NIH and the other federal institutes are trying to figure out their women's health priorities. But, this is a great opportunity to apply for those women's health concepts as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think regardless of, changes that have happened in the last couple of months.
Like products that focus on women with disabilities, products that focus on teenage girls, mental health, autoimmune diseases, services, clinical research, precision medicine for women. This is a great opportunity for that.
Michael, this is Robert. When someone asked about is the commercialization plan requirements similar or different compared to the omnibus for this, and I'm thinking also like NSF, they fund similar technologies. Can you just talk about the difference in maybe like what in this particular opportunity with NIH and this institute with this specific one you're talking about? Is it a little NSF wants these bigger markets to address big problems, whereas you guys it may not be the biggest, millions and millions of customers, but you're talking about health disparities that might be a smaller market. So how compare
it could be smaller markets, but it also could be like, I'm going to focus on, the Chinese American market. That's a pretty big market. I'm focusing on Indian Americans. It's just, and this is why I like doing phase ones, because it has a much more special emphasis. But like a bigger example could be like for phase two, we're going to be focusing on like Latino markets and, the South, the Southwest. So you're going to be focusing on like Southern California, Arizona, New Mexico. That's a bigger market, mostly Mexican American dominated. Maybe you're going to be focusing on a different Latino population. So it could be, like, I guess that would be an example of a smaller market, but collectively, like, they're a bigger Latino market. So it doesn't need to be I never really got into the weeds on the NSF stuff. But it doesn't need to be like, the analogy I like to say is that even with companies such as like Facebook, as they scaled up, which I think this is especially like the phase ones are great for, as they scaled up, Facebook started off and like Harvard, then it moved to like 5 or 6 other colleges, then it moved to all these other colleges. They just kept on moving up to, like, they grew. And I think that's how you should look at it, is like, you're not going to be rolling out something nationally. You're going to have to incrementally build your business.
Right. Okay, let's see. Okay. We are working on a technology monitoring aging populations with a focus on chronic conditions for sleep health improvement, but in a very early stage. Is it appropriate for SBIR?
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. We are working on a technology that monitoring aging populations with a focus on chronic conditions for sleep health improvement, but we're in a very early stage. Is it appropriate for us?
Absolutely. Phase one appropriate, definitely.
Phase one.
Yeah, we can even show you how to slice and dice that into like separate like phase ones, like with chronic conditions, focus that can mean a lot of things. It could also mean like different age groups too. Like you could be focusing on like older adults, you could be focusing on women, you could be focusing on people 80 and over, you could be focusing on people 55 and older. There's just a lot of different ways to write it, but those are all going to be different customer markets, but also a different approach in an environment, which is going to be important for the reviewers to assess your concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that just goes back to show you very important to talk to program managers when you have the opportunity. So
I do a lot of strategic planning conversations, and even like with our investment, like our private partners, like, that's what we really talk about, is how to reach these incremental markets with their products.
Mm-hmm. Right. So there's someone actually used the Q&A. Let me look and see what's there. Regarding women's health, would it also include maternal and neonatal health? Yes, I'm assuming yes. I don't know if you want to add anything more there, Michael.
No, in fact, I would bring in, even though they're not a part of this, I would bring in my colleagues over at the Childhood Institute to provide that scientific expertise with that concept.
And that's NICHD, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. We have 7 minutes left till the top of the hour. Yeah, I don't think we've answered all the questions as far as I can tell. Actually, let me see.
I
Oh,
hope this was helpful.
yeah, I think it was definitely helpful. I learned some things as well. Do you have guidance? So not nothing, another one that came up. Do you have guidance for applying if we are not developing a women's health therapeutic and therapeutics were not listed as part of the main focus? So I think they're referring to the fact that therapeutic was not a specific
It
category.
wasn't a specific category, but also think about how you're going to deliver that therapeutic.
Mhm.
You might want to think about that as well. Like, how are you going to develop the therapeutic, especially in, or how are you going to make it more understandable so that like it is reaching more customers? You can use that as a like, almost like as a service delivery aspect for like a phase one,
Got it.
because you're going to need to get your product to market and reach certain populations. So maybe it's like think about like, oh, if we put this into the market towards people reach, actually using it, in these different, we're a big we're a big country with a lot of different infrastructure and environmental barriers. How are you going to overcome that so that people can actually get this?
No, that's actually a good point. I mean, you bring up the disparity component. A lot of people don't think about the environment and infrastructure, and that's that is a big part of differing access to health and healthcare products. So it's something that people often don't fully conceptualize until they talk to someone like you.
Yeah. And Robert, those are some great events you're doing. If you want to talk a little bit about TABA, if we run out of questions, go ahead. But if you ever need like presenters or anything, let me know. I know your counterpart at New York Bio usually has me on speed dial. So, I love working with the state bio associations.
Great. Yeah. Well, and I just put this in there is one of the most, as far as TABA, yeah, I can happy to mention
Because a
all
lot of
the,
people apply, they're like, "Oh, I didn't know about TABA." And I'm like, "We had this discussion about you including it in your budget, and now you've got to apply for, separately and like wait for it."
yeah. Yeah. All the agencies that, not all agencies have TABA. And they're all handled a little differently. In some agencies, you need to in your phase one. It basically provides you with a little like $5,000 or $6,000 if you get your phase one.
6,500 for phase one and
Yeah,
37,000 for phase two. I think.
yeah, and which is a little different than DoD has like 25K per year for phase two. So, but some of them require you to put the vendor in when you write it. Some say, hold on, let's wait until after you get the phase one award, so you don't have to go spin your wheels and getting somebody's statement of work put together when something we don't even fund you. How do you guys do that now? Do you make them, or they could use your vendor
Uh, for phase two,
for phase?
NIH chooses the vendor. For phase one, you can choose your vendor. Just don't do something where like you've got a side company because we will claw back the money with like,
Right.
you're like, oh well, I'm going to
Your
use it in
brother-in-law.
my company and my concept, and also I'm the CEO of a consulting firm,
Yeah.
and I'm going to use my consulting firm, and
It's,
I
yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm going to use my TABA funding for this. We do check our reports, and I do claw that back.
TAB is technology and business assistance, and basically it's trying to help you do some of those things in your phase one that might help you fill some of the voids in your phase two, as far as whether it be patent filing, legal discussion, commercialization plan enhancement. Because phase one at NIH, they ask for hardly anything, but then it goes from 0 to 80 really quick. And the phase two is a big ask for commercialization, and like, where's this going to go, how many markets, how are you going to sell this, how much are you going to charge for it, who are you going to collaborate with, how are you going to sell it. And if where NSF requires a lot of that in the phase one, so it's less of a delete in phase two, but the tablet can help do a lot of those things. But and we're going to talk about that in that special webinar about what the agencies are doing it for. Yeah, I had a question. What are some of the common mistakes then that people make that you see I mentioned in the comment? Is it they don't have their teams are pretty green, too green, they're not enough facilities, or
Staff
they're going to
submit
staff it?
something that they would submit to a conference to speak, and not like, hey, this is how I would carry out the project. Like, I have an evaluation background, I've got a clinical research background. You know, not having the team reflected, or at least saying this is what we need to hire to carry out the project. The other thing too is that the approach in the environment, like you just don't keep it simple, or you keep it like you say, like I remember this one company in the Pacific Northwest put in a ton of time, and I loved working with this couple. But and I told the PI, I was like, do not do this. I was like, but he was developing a concept for rural populations, and then he automatically like put in like two sentences about how he was also going to like test this and Indian populations around tribal lands, and it just looked completely out of scope. And they ended up getting like a 6. Everything else was awesome on the score, but then they ended up getting like 6s and 7s or something, and it just made them unfundable, and it sucked. It was terrible because I put in so much time. I love the concept. Like you guys have to understand, like the companies here, you have to understand. We put in a lot of time with you. We kind of live and die with you. It's why there's a firewall wall between us and the reviewers. So we're not like, a bunch of like little league coaches on the side, like, yelling at the reviewers. I don't even attend the review sessions. Like I have to let the reviewers do their own independent assessment. But those are the common mistakes I see, is just kind of, you know, losing that focus, but also not demonstrating that you have the team to carry out the project within that approach and that environment. Think about it as you're just building a small project plan.
I think we're going to conclude on one last question from Esther. We're again in women's health focus. So we're building a community service for women with reproductive health issues, starting with endometriosis, fibroids, and PCOS. Would we be eligible for this grant, or is the grant more specific to tech-based?
Yeah, we'd have to talk. You could definitely slice that into a bunch of different concepts. Like you could probably attack each one of those disease areas or focus on each one of those disease areas. I'm a little rusty on my women's health game. I helped. I was one of the point people on developing a concept throughout as for the other institutes on SBIR focused on women's health and research, and now it's developed. I'm still hoping it's going to be released, but I'm just kind of trying to see how they're approving funding opportunities right now. So I'm a little rusty on the women's health aspects, but we could have a further conversation about that. But from it sounds like you could divide that up into 3 or 4 different phase ones, which is great because then that kind of allows your team to focus, and you're eligible now for more than a few grants that could hit. But also it talks about where you want to have that strategic planning conversation on incrementally developing your concept.
No, that's super helpful. And I am just so we are right around time. I'm gonna just put a few links in the chat if folks want to access that. So thanks everyone for dialing in. Really appreciate really appreciate your interest in this. Want to send a thanks to Mike for his time and discussing this opportunity and the NIH SBIR programs in such a level of granular detail and taking so many questions. A thank you to Robert as well for his insights as part of the VIPC. And if you're interested in joining their workshops, again, he's provided his contact info, and we'll have it in the slides and a recording that we'll send after. A shout out to, again, our partners at Virginia Bio for co-hosting and spreading the word out about this webinar. And then also I wanted to, all those links are in the chat that I just shared. So NIMHD, Virginia Bio, VIPC. Also wanted to plug GG Consulting. If you are interested in learning more about us, you can feel free to reach out to me. I will send an email afterwards. Our website is also linked in the chat. And also want to flag upcoming next week is a webinar that we do every month on our government bioscience grants reporting service, where we go through our report that we put out that comprehensively lists out federal funding opportunities. It's actually being published today, but the webinar is the third Thursday of every month at 12 p.m. So if you're interested in this type of thing, I'm sure that forum next Thursday would also be of interest to you. And with that, thanks again so much for that.
Thanks, Liz, for letting me do this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, hope you found this helpful, and we'll follow up with the link and other materials, and look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, everyone, for the opportunity.